Time for Rockin Company's Rockin' CU, featuring Adam Munsterteiger, publisher of my favorite reading, BuffStampede.com, on the Yahoo Rivals National Network. Follow him at AdamCM777 on Twitter. And Rockin Company, family owned and operated in Colorado, 5 decades, 2 generations, historic and modern masons and general contractors. Build it with rock. Build it with Rockin Company, rockandco.com. And a week following the draft, when we sort of anticipated some University of Colorado athletes being drafted, Adam, the Buffaloes were shut out.
Yeah, this is actually the first time in back-to-back years that Colorado hasn't had a football player drafted in the NFL draft, dating all the way back to 1949, 1950, so a really long time. We didn't think there were going to be any early draft picks, but we thought Nelson Spruce would be a late pick, thought maybe Stephon Nembot would be picked late, and then there was maybe some hope from Kenneth Crawley that he would get a late draft pick as well, but of course none of them get picked. There are certain situations where it's better to go undrafted, be able to pick your spot versus going to maybe a situation that doesn't suit you. Stephon Nembot felt like he had a good connection with the Baltimore Ravens offensive line coach, so we'll see what happens there. And then Nelson Spruce getting a chance to go home to L.A., so not a bad deal for him either.
Yeah, and it is good. There is a debate on whether you're better off being a 7th-rounder or a free agent. Absolutely. And, Nelson Spruce, why not drafted? A 4.69 40-yard dash. But guys have been in the league with numbers equally as unimpressive.
Yeah, that's the only reason he didn't get drafted. There's no mystery there at all. But you can't tell me there were 33 receivers drafted over him. You can't tell me there are 33 better pro prospects than Nelson Spruce. I mean, this is a guy that obviously his production speaks for itself at the college level. And, he did improve that. He ran a 4.56 at CU's pro timing day. Still nothing that's going to, wow scouts or anything. A big key for him, I think, going out to the Los Angeles Rams is being able to show that he can be a contributor on special teams. I think that's going to be make or break for him in terms of making that football team. He's going to have to adjust to playing primarily in the slot role after playing more as an outside receiver at CU. He did train with Jared Goff leading up to the combine, and from what I understand, they have pretty good chemistry, so that's a good part of him going to Los Angeles. The Rams did draft a couple of receivers, Farrell Cooper from South Carolina and Michael Thomas from Southern Mississippi, and then they brought in 2 other undrafted free agents at the position. So it's definitely going to be some competition there. I would be surprised, honestly, though. I don't know if it's going to be at Los Angeles long term, but I think Nelson Spruce will find at least one team, some team in the NFL that will value what he can bring to the table, and that's consistency. This is an elite route runner, great hands, and I think he's going to have, of those guys that went undrafted and signed on with NFL teams, I think Nelson Spruce definitely has the best chance to stick with the team long term.
I agree with that, and I think separation, you often can't coach separation.
Yep, I agree.
And he gets separation. That is a rare quality. Stephon Nembot, you mentioned signing with the Ravens. Seems like a perfect Ravens and we talked about this last Saturday, perfect practice player, raw material, very raw, had to switch between both tackle positions this last year. Kenneth Crawley, New Orleans, not sure. I have high hopes for him, and especially not for Jared Bell, the safety with the 49ers, or Christian Powell as a running back with the Steelers.
No, I wouldn't think. I think Stephon, because he will be viewed as a project, maybe a guy that can develop on the scout team there in Baltimore for a while or with somebody else. But I think Nelson and Stephon Nembot are the only guys that really have a legit chance to stick in the NFL.
And let's turn our now that we have a kind of an off week without a lot of big news, turn more to recruiting. We always try to do something on recruiting with Colorado, and certainly BuffStampede.com is the place you must go to follow that. Curtis Chiaverini, we've had a long time. It's famous that coaches get hired and suddenly incredible, talented sons sign on with the team that hired them. That
hasn't always been a good thing.
This is not the case. Well, Danny Manning's father signed on with Larry Brown at Kansas, and Danny Manning brought a national title to Kansas.
Hawkins
comes
does that ring a bell?
to mind. Yeah, and Cody Hawkins. It didn't work out as well for Dan Hawkins, but Curtis Chiaverini comes in with his co-offensive coordinator father to Colorado. He's transferred to Valor Christian, the football factory locally here. 6'1", 190 transfer. Is there a chance that playing at Valor with Dylan McCaffrey as his highly recruited quarterback, that that he can raise his level of play? Does he have that kind of talent? I haven't seen footage on this guy. to where he would be of interest to Colorado. Right now, he's kind of getting Air Force, Northern Colorado, Montana type interest.
Well, CU's going to get a chance to see him at their camp in June. They're going to kind of know what he can do, and obviously his dad knows what he can do, and he's the receivers coach at CU. I will say this: I think Curtis Chiaverini is better than some of the receivers that Colorado signed in the last decade. But it's kind of ironic here is that Darren Chiaverini, his father, has upped the level of recruiting for CU in terms of receivers. They bring in Juwan Winfrey, a 4-star JC guy, and they've got verbal commitments from 2 blue-chip receivers right now,
Yes.
and they might get a verbal commitment from Maurice Bell, another highly regarded receiver. If Maurice Bell commits, and he says he's going to announce on his birthday on June 10th, that gives you 3 receivers this cycle, and you might be done at that position.
I agree.
I think Curtis Chiaverini is a guy that UNC should offer today, and some other schools should, Mountain West schools might want to take a long look at him. He's going to camp up at CSU. It's going to be kind of a numbers crunch at CU. I mean, there obviously could be a preferred walk-on situation there, but if Curtis can get some offers from some other schools, that might be tough to turn down.
It is very impressive what Colorado is doing at the receiver level with 4-star commits and interest that they're getting. And I don't guess there will be a room for Curtis Chiaverini, but you never know. He could be like his dad, a terrific overachiever. You wrote this week that when news broke that Colorado was looking at Jimmy Witt, a former 4-star high school player, to transfer in from Arkansas, he'd be another one of those talented perimeter athletes coming in here. You said you were wrong, actually. He's not their top target. They've got a 7-footer in mind.
They do. I'm going to pronounce his last name once because it's a mouthful. His first name is Dominic and last name is Olenichek, and he's a 7-footer from Poland, played his freshman season at Drake, and it really seemed to click for him there at the end of his freshman campaign. He averaged more than 10 points per game through the final 9 games, shot 72% over the course of the season, and so Colorado brought Jimmy Witt out on a visit, and they also brought Dominic out on a visit as well. And after seeing Dominic play with and against Josh Scott, Wesley Gordon, Torrey Miller, their bigs, they were just wowed. They were really impressed. They think he's a difference maker type of player. Now there's competition for Dominic. He also visited Ole Miss. He was at Cal this past week. It sounds like it might come down to those 3 schools, and there's a lot of people trying to influence him back in Poland. So it's tough to say where he's going to end up. But Colorado definitely put their chips in the middle of the table for this guy. They think he's a big time player. I was told a decent comparison for him would be he's a little less athletic version of Caleb Tarczewski, but actually might be a little bit better of a scorer than Tarczewski was. Both those guys are around 250, 7 foot. So CU's really, really high on him. We'll see how this shakes out.
That's a good thumbnail capsule. Tarczewski was life and death to just make a layup when he first got to Arizona. After being a McDonald's All-American with all the potential in the world.
Just dunk the ball. You don't have to worry about it.
2 things. Both these guys, Jimmy Witt and Olenek, would have to sit out next year, but they'd be available the year after when a number of guys are done. But is there room for both of them if they can get them both?
No, Jimmy Witt is actually going to transfer to SMU. So, yeah, there's only one scholarship available. And again, they're all in on Dominic. But I'm told they do have some irons in the fire if he did decide to go elsewhere. But he's definitely their top target, and Witt is apparently off the board.
Hey,
here.
Adam, real quickly, you mentioned Josh Scott earlier. I noticed he was not invited to the NBA Combine. Is that a bad sign?
Yeah, it's not a good sign for him. All the projections I'm seeing don't have him going drafted, which is unfortunate. But he'll obviously, kind of like we were talking about Nelson Spruce and the undrafted free agents for football, he'll get a chance somewhere.
Thank you very much, Adam. Everybody should read buffstampede.com. We'll talk to you next week on Rockin' Company's Rockin' CU.
Sounds good, guys. Thank you.
All right, Rockin' CU, brought to you by the family-owned and operated 5 decades, 2 generations, historic, modern masons and general contractors. Build with Rock, build with Rockin' Company, rockandco.com.
Does that surprise you
Undrafted,
that Josh Scott's not going to get drafted? Does that surprise you?
It doesn't surprise me from
No?
what we've said on this show. It doesn't, but I think he's a good chance for a second rounder. We shall see. They don't like his lack of athleticism.